Hi, this is James Maroney from First Choice College, and today I'm going to review with you how to file your 2019-2020 FAFSA. First, you start by going to www.fafsa.ed.gov. Once there, you're going to click on Start Here underneath where it says New to the FAFSA process. The next screen will give you the option to either log in and saying I am the student, or I am a parent, preparer, or student from a freely associated state. I'm assuming it's the parent who's going to be doing this, so you'll click I am a parent, but then you'll need to enter in the student's information, the student's first name, last name, social security number, and date of birth. Once you're finished entering that information, click Next. The next page is a disclaimer. You'll need to read through the disclaimer, which is basically just saying that you are who you say you are and that there are penalties for falsely entering information, and click Accept. Now, you're going to click Start the 2019-2020 FAFSA. On the next page, it says Create a Save Key. All this is a password in case you don't complete the filing of FAFSA the first time you go through it, and you need to log back in to pick up wherever you left off. So I usually make this a very generic like password or something that's easy to remember, because after you've submitted the FAFSA, you no longer need to know this password or save key. So you just want it to be very easy in case you lose power, or you get the computer crashes, you get disconnected, and you need to log back in and resume from wherever you left off. So put in whatever you want, re-enter that, and then click Next. This is just an introduction. It'll go through some of the information you need. We're doing that right now, so when you get to that screen, you can just click Next. So on the next page, you're going to have to fill in the student's basic demographic information. All of this will be already pre-filled because you entered that on our first screen. All you will need to do is add in the student's middle initial here and then click Next. This next page, you're going to have to put in the mailing address for the student and the email address. I've found students aren't the best at checking their email, so I usually will enter the parent's email address here. Even though there is a place later on for you to enter the parent's email address again, I find you're more likely to get notifications if they go to the parent than to the student. Once you've clicked that information, you'll click Next. Now you have to answer your state residency question. Have you lived there? Has the student lived there for at least 5 years? So this is something to remember. Whenever it says you or your, it's referring to the student. Even though you're filling this in as the parent, you or your refers to the student. When it says your parents, it means the student's parents, so not the student's grandparents or the parent's parents. So has the student lived in whatever state you live in for at least 5 years? Then you, if they have, you would click Yes and then click Next. The next page, they'll ask if the student's male or female, telephone number, the driver's license number. You do not have to enter in the driver's license number. Even if the student has a driver's license, you don't have to enter the number here. You will need to enter that when you're applying for your federal direct loans, but you do not need to enter that on the FAFSA. So if you don't have that piece of information, don't worry, leave it blank and click Next. So again, your marital status means the students. Typically, the answer would be I am single, and then click Next. So if it's a male, you must register with the Selective Service. If the student is registered with the Selective Service, you would click Yes. If not, you would click No, and then it will give you the option to automatically register the student once they become eligible, so you can click Yes to that. Are you a U.S. citizen? If you are, you would click the I am a U.S. citizen. That's a drop-down menu. So once that information has been entered, you would click Next. So again, this is the student's grade level information. So what will your high school completion status be when you begin college? Typically, it will be a high school graduate if they're graduating high school. Doesn't mean they've graduated already. It means that next fall when they start college, they will be a high school graduate. So that is the choice you would pick from the drop-down menu. If they're going in for their first time, then it will be a first-time freshman from the second drop-down menu. And then degree or certificate, again, if they're going to get a bachelor's, it would be a first bachelor's degree. Will you have your bachelor's degree before you begin? Again, typically the answer to this is no. And so it means will you have completed it, the bachelor's degree. So once you've answered those questions, we check Next. So some more demographic information on the student. Are you interested in being considered for work study? I always by default click yes. You can always turn it down later on. But it's up to you on that. Are you a foster youth or were you at any time in the foster care system? If you are or were in the foster care system, you're automatically considered an independent student. So it gives you the dependency override where you would not need to enter parent information. But if the answer is no, you click no, and then you answer the information on the highest level of school completed by your parents, and then click Next. So now for the school selection, you'll have to type in the name of your high school, what city is your high school located, the state, and then search for it, and then you'll have to add that in. Also, and we didn't go through these here, after you've done your high school, you'll have to choose the colleges that you would like to attend and where you would like that information sent. After you've done that, we're going to determine the student's dependency status. So were you born before January 1st, 1996? If you were, then you're considered an independent student. If they're married, then you're considered an independent student. If you're going on to an advanced degree, so if you have your first bachelor's degree, you get the dependency override. You're automatically considered an independent student. So if the answer to all of those is no, we click Next. And there are still more dependency status questions. Do you now have or will you have children who receive more than half of their support from you, which would give you the dependency override? Do you have dependents other than children who receive more than half their support from you? Again, yes to any of those questions would give you that dependency override. If you click no, if the answer is no for those, you enter Next, and typically they're going to most colleges would require you to enter your parents' information, even though the FAFSA will still give you the option to not enter the information. So then on the next page, some more dependency questions. Are you currently serving in the U.S. Armed Forces? Are you a veteran? Were both your parents deceased? Were you in foster care, or were you dependent or ward of the court? You know, are you an emancipated minor? Does someone other than your parent or step-parents have legal guardianship of you as determined by a court in your state of legal residence? So again, all of these would qualify you for that dependency override. If you check none of the above, if none of the above are true, you check that and then click Next. Were you homeless or were you self-supporting? So again, if you're not homeless or at risk of being homeless, you would click no. So then when we get there, we had gone through and we didn't meet any of those dependency criteria, so you're considered a dependent student. This means you must provide the parental information. So even though it says you must provide it, they still ask you if you will provide it. So of course, if you want to get the financial aid, you would click I will provide information about my parents, and then click Next. Now we're going to go to the parents' demographic information. So again, they give us that reminder. The you or your always means the student. Your parents, if you're the parent filling this out means you. What is the marital status of your parents? So you could be married, remarried, divorced or separated, never married. So it'll give you those options. So you pick what the status is and then click Next. So whichever parent you want to be parent 1, you have to enter in all their demographic information. So the name, social security number, and date of birth. And make sure that the last name that you put in would match the name on file for the parent with the Social Security office, because they will check to verify. And so sometimes a parent, if they change their last name, they may not have, so they may be going by it socially or even on some of their paperwork, but they may not have filed the paperwork with the Social Security office. And so we have had mismatches come up because of that. So make sure, again, whatever name you put in for the last name is the name that the parent has on file with the Social Security office, and then the parent's date of birth. So we do the same for parent number 2. Put in the parent's email address. You can put in the same email address you put in for the students, or maybe in the first one you want to put the mother's, the second time you want to put the father's, or or maybe it's father, stepfather, mother, stepmother, or whatever combination you want to do. But it does allow you to put in your own email as both the student email and the parent's email. And then it'll ask the residency question for the parent if you've lived in the state for at least 5 years. So next we go into the household size. So already it's how many the parents and the student, and then you would add in how many more people. If you had 1 brother and sister, you would just put 1 for the other dependents there. And then it'll add up their total number. So we go by what's called prior year. And so for the 2019-2020 year, we're using the 2017 tax information. So it asks if you completed it, already completed, or will file are the choices. So typically you would check already completed and then click Next. Then it'll ask you how you filed. So for this one, it was married filing joint. It'll also give you the option here to link with the IRS, the data retrieval tool, which a lot of colleges will require you to do that instead of selecting you for verification. That's how they automatically verify. And it'll pull over the information off of your 1040, but not your W-2 information. So you can say yes to link to the IRS, and it'll send you to the IRS website, and you'll have to do some things to make sure that you're verified, you are who you said you are, so it can link that information. For this example, I'm going to go through as if we didn't link to the IRS. So we click Next. So again, here it says it's faster and easier with the IRS. I did the no thanks. You may want to link to the IRS. Eventually you will need to link so that your tax return, they'll consider your application verified. So here, what type of a tax return? Most people file a 1040, but it could be 1040A or 1040EZ. And then the parent's adjusted gross income. This comes right off of your tax return from the very bottom of the first page of your 1040, where it'll say your adjusted gross income. And then we'll click Next. So if you had selected the to link it to the IRS, that would have been pre-filled for you. Okay, so now these next items are a lot of times where people will make mistakes, and where it's asking how much did you make from working, parents' income from working. A lot of times, this comes from your W-2 if you work for someone else. If you're self-employed, it can be from your Schedule C, and then it gives you the line numbers on your 1040 where you would find that, or Schedule C or your Schedule K. If you are earning money, if you are an employee and you're looking at your W-2, then it should be box 5. And the reason is, a lot of times people would think it's box 1, but the reason it should be box 5 from your W-2 is that all this information is used to do is to calculate your Social Security allowance. It's one of the few allowances they give you against your income. And so what a lot of people don't realize is that you do pay Social Security tax on any withholdings you have for 401k or 403b, retirement plans that are pulled out of your paycheck. You are paying Social Security tax on that, but not income tax on that. So in order to give you your full allowance, you actually want the higher number. They're not using this to calculate how much you have to contribute towards your child's education. It's calculating the allowance you get. So again, you want to do box 5. So let's say you had $10,000 withheld for a 401k. Putting box 5 versus box 1 will lower your expected contribution by about $400. Again, it's not a lot, but it makes it worth it watching this whole video. So put in those, enter that information for both parents, then click next. Amount of your parents' income tax. If you had done the data retrieval tool, it'll be pre-filled. So again, this comes off of your 1040. So and it gives you the line number to pull it off of. Number of exemptions, and again, this comes off of your 1040 as well. So if we said, there's the 2 parents, the 1 student, and 1 brother, there would be 4 exemptions, and then we would click next. Now, in the case of divorced or separated parents, where a lot of times the exemption goes back and forth. They alternate years on who gets the exemption. It doesn't matter who gets the exemption for who should file the FAFSA. The person who files the FAFSA is where the student lives. So it's the custodial parent, where the student lives more than 50% of the time. So again, you'll enter this information, and if you've done the data retrieval tool, it'll be pre-filled for you. We click next. So this is some of we're getting into the untaxed income here, which is added back to your FAFSA. So these are the extra questions. So these are actually credits that you would get here before we go to the untaxed. So if you got a tax credit or scholarship money that was reported as income, those will help you. But then if you had IRA deductions, 401k deductions, that gets added back into your income. They consider that a discretionary while the student is in college. So they add that to your income, and they figure it's added to your ability to pay for college. So now we have more financial questions. So did you have any of the following? So if your parents paid, and remember when it says your parents, it's really you if you are the student's parent filling this out. So if you paid child support, they give you a credit for that. Again, if you receive child support, they add that into your ability to pay. And so then we check next. So the parent's asset question. So if your assets are below a certain level, you don't have to answer these questions. So here, what is the balance of cash, savings, and checking? It's as of the day you file. So while the income is the prior year, the assets are a snapshot as of the day you file. If you have any investments. So that investments would be stocks, bonds, mutual funds, real estate other than the home you live in. So if you have investment real estate or a vacation home, anything that's not in a retirement account. So your IRAs do not count. Your Roth IRA, your 401k, a 403b, a tax-deferred annuity. Those do not count as assets. It's anything that's a current asset. So one way to check, to know if you have current assets is if you look on your tax return, and at the top of the tax return, if you see anything, if you have any interest income or dividend income, then you have assets that should be put in here. If there's nothing being reported, then maybe your assets are in a or in a retirement vehicle that you don't need to report here. Of course, if you had another home, the value of that second home would have to be reported. Then the other is your current businesses. So they don't count the value of a business if it's your primary source of income and you have 100 or fewer employees. So, but if you have a business, they actually shield business assets a little higher percentage than they shield the other assets. So we answer all of those questions and click next. So that's all of the parent financial information. So now we need to do it for the student. If the student had a tax return, you could do the same thing by linking it. If they did not file, you can check did not file and will not file. Then we go. This was just the bottom part there where you would have been able to link to the IRS. So click next. And again, here we can say no thanks. So you can link it to the IRS. So in this case, we linked the student's information. So it tells you that it's transferred from the IRS. Income from working. So that was transferred. Again, a reason to say no in case you had those deductions, and the student typically wouldn't. That's why we linked the student and not the parent. Amount of the income tax, again, that comes from the 1040. The number of exemptions, which for a student, if they were being claimed by their parents, would be 0. That would come from the 1040. The one problem when you do link this is, as you can see, it doesn't show you the numbers. It just says transferred from the IRS. So it makes it hard to figure out if there's a problem. That's why I do typically just enter the information myself rather than crossing it over. And I had only one example of a parent, one of my students' parents this year who did the link, and then it pulled information, it pulled the number from an IRA that they were rolling over and added that to their income. And so it artificially inflated their EFC, and it's made it very difficult. It was hard to figure out what had happened because we couldn't see any of the numbers on there. I knew the EFC was way off, double actually what it should have been. But that's one reason why I like to just do it myself instead of transferring it, enter it myself. So we're going to go through, these are a lot of the questions we had talked about before. So college scholarship aid that you reported as income, again, you would get a credit. They don't want that to penalize you. Combat pay or special pay that was taxable and included in your income, they don't want to penalize you on that. And then other things that we had gone through. If you made a deduction and payment to your SEP KEO, to a 401k, any of those things are add backs. Education credit, actually, if you would claim that, then they would add that back onto your taxes paid. Taxes paid is one of those, again, one of the other allowances against your income. So some of these are helping you, some of these are increasing the amount of your expected family contribution. So we go through and we finish answering these questions and we click next. So, and again, did they pay child support? Earnings from a co-op if you're in college, So they don't want to penalize you from, from your co-op earnings. They're not going to add that to your expected family contribution. Earnings from need-based employment programs. So your work study money isn't going to penalize you. If you receive child support, that is added into your income. If you get a housing allowance that you're not taxed on, that is, they add that value to your income. Any money received, so this is kind of the catch-all. Money received or paid on your behalf. The payments to tax deferred, so the 401ks, and then other untaxed information. Any other untaxed income. So now we go to the student asset questions. They always ask this. There's no asset protection allowance for students. And so from the first dollar, they're taking 20% of the student's assets. One thing to remember when you're filling out the student's assets, if you have money in a 529 plan, that should be added in as a parent asset, not as a student asset. So parent assets are assessed at a maximum of 5.6%, whereas student assets are assessed at 20%. There is an asset protection allowance for parents. There's no asset protection allowance for students. So that is a nice benefit of the 529. In addition to the tax benefits, the fact that it is counted as a parent asset. If it's in the grandparent's name, it's actually not included on the form at all. So we answer these questions, and again, it's the snapshot as of the day we file, and then click next. If you had a preparer, the preparer would have to enter in his or her social security number or employee ID number for the company they're working for. We click next. And so a preparer would only be a paid preparer. If someone's helping you, they don't need to enter that information. Now there's a summary. You can review all the information. You may want to print this out to keep it for your records. And now you'll need to provide the signatures. So here you can sign it online, and if you can sign online using your FSA ID. So if you have older children, much older children, you may have had a PIN number. They no longer use the PIN number. It's only the FSA ID. And so you'll need to create that. You can actually create that now if you wanted to. When you clicked on provide parent or provide student signature, you'd have the opportunity to go and create that FSA ID. Now for the parents, it would be the same FSA ID for any of your children. So if you are going to have more than one child in college at the same time, you would use that same FSA ID. If you have another child who may be coming after the older child is done, again, it's that same FSA ID that you will use. So you'll want to write that down and keep that information somewhere safe. So once you have to agree to the terms when you're going to sign it, click next, and then you sign the FAFSA. The parent would need to go through and sign, provide the parent signature. You can choose whether it's parent 1 or parent 2. Agree to the information, submit their FSA ID and password, and then click to sign the FAFSA. And so now it has these, now it's been signed, so then you can submit the FAFSA. So the FAFSA is not submitted until you click Submit My Fafsa Now. So we click that, and then you get this confirmation page with the data release number. You can print the page out, and then lower down on the page, this is the important information for you. Your EFC, so expected family contribution. And then it'll show the schools where it's being sent, and it'll give you some data on those schools. So again, EFC, expected family contribution, that's the amount of money they're going to expect you to pay each year that the student is in college. And all of your need-based aid goes off of that number. So that's it. you've submitted your FAFSA, you're all set. I would print a copy of this as well as a copy of the information you submitted and save that. Thanks for watching the video. If you have any questions, you can go to our website, www.firstchoicecollege.com. Thanks for watching and have a great day.